Now the next transaction is again an intrastate sale transaction. So where we are selling 2 printers to a dealer which is located in Bangalore itself. So it is a local sale, and this transaction is a cash transaction. So far whatever transactions that we have recorded, those were credit sales or credit purchase. So how do we record the cash transaction? Let's find out. Let me open sales voucher and enter the date of entry as 15th of August. For cash transactions, we need to select the ledger cash in party account name and press enter, and fill the details if you want to over here. Now in this field buyers, you need to specify the buyer to whom you have sold the items. So press Alt M to open list of ledgers and select the buyer. So the buyer is Ultra Technologies, so I will select it so that his relevant information would be captured over here, and most importantly his GST would be captured in this entry. And suppose if we don't specify the buyer over here, then GST output would not be recorded in this buyer's account. So it's important to specify the buyer over here, and in the party account name you need to specify the ledger as cash, because it's a cash transaction and not a credit transaction. And in the sales ledger you need to select the sales account ledger and specify the list of items that you have sold. So I sold 2 units of HP DeskJet printers at 6,001 rupees, and since it is a intrastate transaction, CGST and SGST would be applicable. Notice that the invoice number is in decimals, and in order to make it into a whole number, we will create a separate round off ledger. To create a round off ledger which adjusts the decimals, you need to press Alt C so that we can create a ledger. So the name of the ledger would be round off, and you can either group it under indirect expenses or indirect income. So I will select indirect expenses over here and select the type of ledger as invoice rounding. And in the field rounding method, you can select a rounding method of your choice. So I would select normal rounding for this field. In the field rounding limit, you can specify a number, the extent to which the rounding would happen. For example, if my invoice amount is 100 rupees and 20 paise, and if I had specified the rounding limit as 1, then after rounding off my invoice amount would be 100 rupees. And if I had specified the rounding limit as 2, then my invoice amount would be 99 rupees. So specifying a rounding limit would limit the extent to which the rounding takes place, and the ideal value for this field is number 1. So I will retain the default value and I will press the enter key and save the ledger creation. So notice that the invoice amount is now changed into a whole number. And what normal rounding does is that it will check for the decimal value in the invoice amount, and if the decimal value is more than 50 paise, then it would round off the amount in upwards direction, and if the decimal value is lower than 50 paise, then it would round off the amount in downwards direction. And if I had specified the rounding method as upward rounding, then no matter what is the decimal value, my invoice amount would always be rounded in upward direction. So in that case my invoice amount would be 14,163 rupees. And because of the rounding limit, the rounding would take place to the extent to which we are allowing the rounding to happen. If I would have selected the upward rounding and the rounding limit would be 1, then my invoice amount cannot exceed more than 14,163 rupees. So this is how rounding method and rounding limit works. And now I will save this transaction. I'll press Ctrl A to save the transaction.